that sat on them benches. I never talked to them boys that sat on them benches. I was in the game on 4th and inches. Coach, 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 coach,
Now it's time to go to work. Alrighty. I think I've got this thing figured out. Added a bunch of new features to my streaming app. So I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even try to start that video. But that's okay. It's football season. Finally here. Hope everybody's having a great night. I'm having a great morning. I don't know about y'all, but I'm excited. We about to get into, of course, Florida State, Georgia Tech. There's some narratives going on around there that I don't like, and I think I'm going to dig in the weeds on those a little bit. And it's going to mainly start off with that Haynes King DJU conversation that I keep seeing happening. And I'm not quite a fan of what's being said. But anyway, it's your boy POLK, a.k.a. A.Lo, a.k.a. the goddamn truth. And you are live on 863 Seminole TV. Football season is back. It's here. It's every year it seems like it takes forever to get here, and then we finally get here. And it's like, I don't know about y'all, but it's like Christmas Eve for me. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm hyped. If you by chance are in Ireland, shout out to you. Hope y'all having fun. Be safe out there. Obviously, I'm not in Ireland. I'm in Korea. Yeah. But anyway, man, let's get it cracking. I'm going to hit a roll call, and then we're going to get right into what we came here to talk about, man. FSU, Georgia Tech. Of course, I'm going to give a game prediction. I think I'm even going to give my season. I haven't given my season prediction yet, so I'm going to do that. But I'm definitely going to give this game prediction. And we're going to take a look at some of the key points that Georgia Tech. We're going to pay more attention to Georgia Tech here than we are to us. That's what we're going to do. But before we get started, hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new. Share the video to someone who don't know about the most interactive YouTube channel for the Florida State football fan on the internet. So share the video, subscribe, hit the like button. Y'all already know. Get in them comments. Get in that live chat. Because like I said, this is the most interactive show for the Florida State football fan. I read damn near every comment I see. I answer every question I see. Whether it's good, bad, smart, dumb. If it's dumb, we gonna tell you about it, but I read it. And by the way, yeah, I'm wearing shades. It's a little bit of a new look for this season. If we lose this game, you'll never see the shades again. I'm gonna just say that. I don't have my hat. Left my hat home. So I don't have my hat that I would normally wear for the game days and stuff like that. So we're gonna try rocking my military issued iPro. I kind of like the look. I don't really have a face for glasses. My face is kind of small. And glasses, I don't know, they're kind of big, but I'm gonna rock with it. If you don't like it, too bad. I'm wearing the glasses. Let's hit a roll call real quick. Tyler Hedden, go Noles. I always butcher it, so I ain't gonna try it. But let's go. Todd Pope in the building. Jamal M. Cowboys or Tay Cowboys. Let's go undefeated. Jeremy Martin. Peter Shields in the building. The Fatal Jedi. Williams Wrestling. Man, football is officially back. And this season is as or probably more exciting than last. Well, we don't know yet. But the hype is there. The hype is there, William. Jeremy Martin says 45-13. Belt to ass season starting now. Kusami Hayes in the building. FSU Tony in the building. The gloves are off, says Michael Adams. Almighty Finn, what's going on with you? Our resident Miami Hurricane hater, New King. Salute to you, my friend. Terrell Thomas says, no nation, let's make some mother bleeping noise. Terrell is in the house. Pretty no girl says, it's revenge. I love that you said that. You stole some of my fire, pretty no girl. Because I was going to coin this season at the you stole it from me. But that is the phrase for this year. This is the year of revenge for the Seminole. On the warpath. And this is the year of revenge. Shout out to Pretty No Girl for reading my mind. KCS85 says, what's good, Knowles? Hit the over. 49-17. I think Randy Yates is in the building. I think we've hit just about everybody. Matt J. John Seals, another resident Miami Hurricane fan. As you can see, he says, go Georgia Tech. He would know because his coach failed to take a knee and they lost to Georgia Tech. So they know what it's like to lose to Georgia Tech. Jen Fari. Grill Master says, all I know is we bet not lose to Tech. If this team is anything like people have been saying, they are. And ML1219 says, what up, Pope? What's good? Hit the like button. Hit the like button. And let's get into it, man. Let's get into the conversation. So one of the main things that is being said in this debate on the FSU Florida State, Clayton Welch in the building, what's good? In the FSU Florida State debate, obviously, to start the season is, and I can't even believe this is a legit talking point, but these are the people that y'all watch on social media. You know, these are the people that get paid to cover. And I'm not even talking like the big wigs like ESPN. I'm talking about your, I forget these people's name. The Josh Pett, I think is his name, and some of these other guys, right? These people, DJU versus Haynes King. And what I don't understand about the conversation, I mean, obviously you're going to go to the quarterbacks, and then you're going to have the debate on which quarterback may lead his team. And we're going to start here because what I don't understand about the conversation, 56-14 is diabolical, but maybe you may be right. What I don't understand about the conversation is one guy is being coined as capped out. DJU is who he is. We know what he is. He's not going to get any better. He's been in college forever. Think about that for a second. He is what he is. The other guy is almost as if we've said, or they've said, should I say, oh, he's just getting started. Haynes King has so much potential. Yeah, he threw 16 interceptions last year. But man, if he can turn those down, well, you know what's crazy about that conversation? You realize both have been in college since 2020? Both of these guys have been in college since COVID. DJU has played in 4 seasons, 2020, 2021, 2022, and 23. Haynes King has played in 4 seasons, sparingly in 2020 to be fair, sparingly in 2021 to be fair, and then 2022 and 23. But he was still in college in 2020. He's still been in college the same amount of time as DJU. Still has. And when he's routinely started 2022 and 23, he has a turnover problem. In 2022, 55% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. Last year, he boosted his completion percentage up to 61%, 27 touchdowns, 16 interceptions. Oh, and by the way, passing yards, 2,800. DJU's passing yards, 2,600. So they're throwing roughly the same amount of passing yards. DJU did not have a good completion percentage last year at 57.1, but the man didn't turn the ball over. He only threw 7 interceptions. Threw a few less touchdowns. But again, why is it that DJU is who he is, but Haynes King is all of a sudden going to turn a corner and become Steve Young? It's an interesting thing there. I don't know why they look at Haynes King as how they look at him, and then they look at I'm on the bandwagon of I believe that DJU, for the most part, is what he is. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that DJU will be in the Heisman conversation. I don't necessarily believe so. It doesn't mean he can't be effective. It doesn't mean that Florida State can't use him in an effective way. I don't foresee a 3,000-yard passing season from DJ. I don't necessarily think you need a 3,000-yard passing season from DJ. But I'm also not going to sit here and tell you that Haynes King is all of a sudden going to turn the corner and cut 16. Like, can he cut 16 down to 10? I mean, in theory, that's what Georgia Tech would obviously want him to do. This would make sense if Haynes King was a sophomore or even a legit 3-year junior. Haynes King's been in college as long as DJ Uiagalelei. And yet here we are having this conversation. And for some reason, everybody's leaning towards Haynes King taking the next step. Nothing that Haynes King has done. What Haynes King does do that is better than DJ is he's a more electrifying. And I use that word not necessarily like, you know what I'm saying, a little loosely. But he is a better runner. If you look at his rushing stats, I mean, he had over 600 yards rushing and 9 touchdowns last year, right? Like, that's legit. I would love to get that out of DJ. And DJ doesn't have the electrifyingness or the escapability, probably, of a Haynes King. I think DJ can be an effective runner. I don't need him to be Jordan Travis. I need DJ to put the pressure on defense and wear them down. But at Clemson, you had a season where he ran for 545 yards and 7 touchdowns. That's the year before he went to Oregon State. Last year at Oregon State, they didn't run him very much, but he did have 6 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, a guy like that you're going to use in the red zone. If you can get, and this might sound crazy, but you got to look at the statistics and look at the total. If you can get 2022's Clemson DJ Uiagalelei, where he threw for 2,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, 7 INTs, but he ran for 545 and 7 touchdowns, that's over 3,000 yards of total offense and just under, 30 touchdowns. Like, that is the key mark. That is the benchmark I think FSU should be trying to get at a minimum from him. And if I can get that. So these quarterbacks, like, everybody wants to talk about Haynes King is like so far ahead. I don't know where that's coming from. But if you just look at the numbers, he's really not. And depending on how FSU decides to use DJ, like Clemson that year ran him 142 times. I'm not even mad at that. I think Florida State should probably do something similar. I really do. I've been saying it. Poor man's Tim Tebow since the moment we got him. A guy that big, is he, again, he's not going to break a 50-yarder like Jordan Travis could at any time, but I don't need him to. I need him to give me 5 yards of pop, my friend. All I need is for you to punish a defense, give me 5 yards of pop. If a defense has to then account for, obviously we're going to get into this as we continue this conversation, but if they have to account for in the box, not only a running back, but DJ, you got to leave somebody wide open on the outside. Oh, and by the way, FSU might have the fastest wide receiving group in the country if you take a look at what these guys are running on the track. FSU might just have the fastest wide receiving group in the country. What do y'all think? Am I saying anything crazy yet? Let me see. I just want to see. I'm going to go to the comment section. I want to see if I'm saying anything. I want to see if I'm saying anything out of pocket so far. That's fine. They can hype King up all they want. When the defense dominates this offense, they better not say King is now trash, but that's what they'll do. Haynes King is another QB like Syracuse QBs from last year. I do remember Syracuse's QB from last year, and they definitely hyped him up, Panama Jack. If this was Adam Fuller's first time facing a dual threat QB, I would be more concerned. Remember, they call Van Dyke a preseason Heisman. These talking heads are just that. Van Dyke's a little bit different story because, we all know what happened to Tyler Van Dyke. You want to know what happened to Tyler Van Dyke? Here, I'll tell you what happened to Tyler Van Dyke. That happened to Tyler Van Dyke. Whoops. Get off my screen now, Mario. All right, let's see. Matt J said, I think it's pretty spot on in my opinion. And then Saban said, Knowles have a top 5. Yes, I did see what Nick Saban said. Shout out to Nick Saban. But anyway, Georgia Tech. So the whole Haynes King DJU thing, I think, is being way oversold in favor of Haynes King. I'm not even sure where, like, I don't know where it's coming from, other than I think where it's coming from is I think the problem with DJ Uyunglele is that he was like one of the top quarterback prospects in a long time. Like he had almost a perfect grade. I don't think he had a perfect grade, but almost had a perfect grade coming out of high school. Very hyped prospect. Like, you know, he was his version of, I don't know. I don't want to say Terrell Pryor, because Terrell Pryor was like being billed as like the LeBron James of football. But he might have been I don't know. Did he have bigger hype than Trevor Lawrence? I'm not so sure, but it was right there. Like Dabo was on a run of Watson and Lawrence and then DJ. It was like, when is this Clemson machine ever going to end if they can continue to recruit these kind of quarterbacks? And so I think there's a lot of unfair criticism that DJ gets because he's been in the spotlight since day one. And then some of it is just DJU fatigue. But I've said it before. I say it again. I got to argue back. Well, argue is not the right word. Debate back and forth on Twitter with some of your more favorite, again, sports commentators. Again, I'm not telling you DJU is gonna all of a sudden turn into a 3,000-yard passer, but the notion that he's capped out when he never has really had a consistent offense his whole career. Like, I saw somebody say that Clemson got worse on offense when DJ left. Well, there is a truth to that. The offensive coordinator also left. So obviously Clemson was going to get worse when you got a new quarterback and a new offensive coordinator. So you have to tell the whole truth around that. But you lose your offensive coordinator at Clemson, and then you go to Oregon State, and then that's a different offensive coordinator, different offense. So in 3 years, you got 3 new offenses, and I think Mike Norvell's offense might be the most quarterback-friendly of the bunch. So, obviously that game is going to come down. A game may very well come back to which quarterback is more effective, efficient, and protects the football. And if those are the metrics, I don't see how DJU doesn't have the edge in that category, in that comparison when we talk about quarterbacks. Mario about to ruin Ward too. And I'm a Cam Ward guy. I like Cam Ward. And to go to Miami, he better. Yeah. Jeff, how's it going? You didn't miss too much. BBQ chicken. Speaking of barbecue chicken, what's up, Ice Cold No? Speaking of barbecue chicken, the receivers. Now, the receivers are a very interesting part of this equation for both teams because Georgia Tech is being built as having one of the better receiving corps in the ACC. I think they bring back all 4 of their leading receivers from last year. So they obviously are going to have that continuity, that word I love to talk about just in sports in general. Like, being able to say what doesn't need to verbally be said is very key. And they have that in their receiving corps. So they got Eric Singleton Jr. He had 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. Malik Rutherford, 502 yards, 4 touchdowns. Dominique Blaylock, 300 yards, 2 touchdowns, I think, and Christian Lear. I think all 4 of those guys are back. I've even heard that these guys might be the fastest guys, one of the fastest receiving corps. I don't know what their 100-meter times is or anything like that. I know FSU's. We'll get into FSU's receivers here in a minute. But Eric Singleton, he's a 5'11", 190-pound guy. Okay. averaged about 15 yards a catch. Mike Rutherford, he's a 5'9", 170-pound guy. He's actually out of Miami, by the way. What happened, Miami fans? Why you didn't keep your boy home? Averaged about 11 yards a carry. Dominique Blaylock. He's out of Georgia. They don't have his measurables listed here, which is interesting. But he averaged about 16 yards a catch, 2 touchdowns. Why isn't his? And they just had that he's from Marietta, Georgia, but they don't have how big or small he is. I'm on ESPN's website, by the way, and I'm not gonna go. It's not that important. Oh, he actually played at Georgia. What if I click on his Georgia profile? Maybe they'll have it. No, they don't. He actually originally played for the Bulldogs and had 5 touchdowns as a freshman. He's been in college since 2019. Those COVID seniors are still lingering, y'all. COVID seniors are still lingering around here. And then there's Christian Leary, another 5'10" out of Orlando. So I got a bunch of Florida guys, but a 5'10". They don't have big receivers, so they got a bunch of guys who are under 6 foot, shifty. These type of receivers. What does that mean for FSU in that secondary? Well, FSU, AZ's not a small guy. AZ can get physical if he can get his hands on some of these guys. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's just going to be interesting to see the matchup because they got a bunch of small receivers. Look, I'm not saying the receivers they may very well be as fast as they're being touted. Again, that goes back to that quarterback. You still got Haynes King throwing the ball. You still got a guy that's thrown 16 interceptions back there making decisions. But if you compare that to Florida State's wide receiving core, it gets a little interesting because, again, I think FSU has one of the fastest skill position players in the country. But our guys, of course, Malik Benson, didn't put up a ton of stats at Alabama. We know that. They had Jalen Milroe as their quarterback. I watched some of the Alabama games from because I really wanted to check out Roydell. So, Malik Benson had plenty of times where he popped when he was able to get the ball in his hands. When I just mean he flashed on screen. The problem is the quarterback. Jalen Milroe, this ain't college football 25, where he is like Cam Newton times 2 in that game. Jalen Milroe is like a dollar store version of Anthony Richardson. He's not as good as an athlete as Anthony Richardson, and he can't throw the ball as well as Anthony Richardson. And that says a lot because Anthony Richardson, while he has a huge arm, wasn't the greatest thrower either. Jalen Milroe, I think, is a very lesser version of Anthony Richardson, just when I watch him. And I think that says a lot about why maybe Malik Benson wasn't that effective. I think he will definitely have more than 162 yards, 13 receptions, and 12 yards per catch at FSU. But he's also 6'1", 195. So he's bigger than any receiver that Georgia Tech's throwing out there. If you didn't want to see the everybody should have seen the depth chart. Opposite of Malik Benson, in some interesting developments there, FSU has decided to forego size this year and go straight with speed. So opposite of Malik is Ja'Kai Douglas. Now, I'm excited for Ja'Kai. He is smaller at 5'9", 195. He fits more so with those Georgia Tech receivers. 17 yards a catch. So that's the most of all the receivers in this game. 17 yards a catch. Even Georgia Tech's guys, the most they had was Singleton at 15 yards a catch. Ja'Kai's getting 17 yards a catch. Problem with Ja'Kai last year, he didn't play for the first half of the year due to an injury. When he did play, that's 14 receptions, 243 yards, again, and 17 yards a catch. So let's just times that by 2 and say if he had played the whole year, what would those stats have been? They would have had a pretty decent year, potentially. That's in the receiving room crowded with Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman, where we know that's where bulk of the targets went to those two guys. I'm looking at a big season this year for Ja'Kai Douglas personally. I actually think Ja'Kai has been one of the more underrated players. I know the stats don't really show it, but if you look at since he's been at Florida State, only in 2022 did he average less than 15 yards per catch. And that year was 12.3. Freshman year was 16, almost 17 yards a catch. 21 was 18 yards a catch. And then, of course, last year was 17 yards a catch. He's got longs of 62, 60, and 68. So we've seen him. We know when we need a big play, they like to put him up the seam. That seems to be the go-to play for Ja'Kai Douglas. Put him in a slide, he just goes straight up the seam, bam, always over the top. Like, that's just what he does. So it's going to be interesting to see Ja'Kai Douglas in like a full-time role, but I'm excited for it. Him and Malik Benson. Ja'Kai Douglas is another fast receiver. We've seen his speed over the years. He's not as fast as Malik. He's not as fast as this other guy that is going to be in the slot here. And this one kind of surprised a lot of people. I don't think a lot of people thought we were getting much out of Jaylen Brown, 6'1". So FSU has two receivers that are 6'1". Now he's on the light side at 174. And he didn't do much of anything last year in terms of yards, but he's also a freshman. He's a redshirt freshman, was at LSU in his first year. Should have chose FSU, obviously, but at the end of the day, he ended up to the good guys. You talk about speed. Now you got a wide receiving core of Malik Benson, Jaylen Brown, and Ja'Kai Douglas. Obviously, they are going to mix in some of the bigger guys like Tron to get some burn, and we'll see if we see a Hakeem sighting at all. But I would argue that the receiving, as of right now, I would argue, off of production, I would give Georgia Tech the edge just off of production. Because FSU, as we know, a lot of unproven things, especially when it comes to the skill position players. But I think the potential is there. I absolutely think the potential is there in the receiving core. I see the chat moving, so let me go over here because I've been looking at numbers and stats. What y'all talking about in the chat? It looks like y'all going back and forth. Let me see. I'm going to scroll up because I want to see what y'all talking about. It's got to be John because John always talking, and I know y'all will jump on John's head. John says, we're just better than y'all. John, better than us at what? Better than us at what, John? Because on the field has proved completely different. Anyway, Jeremy says, coming from a team who has never won the ACC title and been in the ACC almost 20 years. Your gameplay picture epic, bro. Barber, thank you. They are still incoming. It takes a lot of time for me to chop those videos up and edit them. I do them because I enjoy them. They don't get a ton of views, but I like doing them. I just got to find time to finish. I got more videos. I just got to chop them up and edit them. But I think that thank you for that ice cold no. Briley says, our wide receivers have been having a hell of a lot better last 2 weeks. So I've heard. Eric Singleton is the only good one. Panama Jack says, all DJU needs to do is be a game manager. Mike Norvell will utilize our veteran O-line and stable running backs to control Georgia Tech's game. Singleton is supposedly a 10-2 guy. Okay. I would jam Singleton every play. Slow down that speed. They couldn't separate versus top teams that played last year. Good observation. Leary's the one who beat Miami on the last second TD. Great observation. Just like the Gators, fans bringing up the past titles. 2021, what have the Candy Canes done lately? Do you remember 45-3 at Dope South? Leary is straight speed. Straight speed. Barbecue chicken. playing in the stadium. Okay, you guys are just going back and forth with the Miami guys. Hope Hakeem can do something. I know FSU's media says we're a running team this year, and we should be, but I think Mike airs it out this year. Interesting. I don't know if he airs it out. But we talked about, I think, in the previous live stream, like how many times a game should DJ be throwing the ball? And I was like, a nice round number like 30. I don't think that's too much. I think you combine that with, again, the running game. I think play action is going to be a huge part of this offense because if they can force teams, like I heard a game, I listened to a guy, I forget who it was, honestly, and he was saying, is Georgia Tech just going to come in and throw 8 in the box? And I'm thinking, you can do that. The scouting report might say, like, FSU, one of the top offensive lines in the country. Mike Norvell and running backs are like, it's like Dave Chappelle and stand-ups. They never go wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, Mike's gonna get the best out of a running back room. That has been the staple since he's got here. I just don't know what DJ's just gonna have to make them pay. If that's what you want to do, if you want to load the box and stop the run, you're playing with poison because eventually I believe that offensive passing attack will click. And again, with that type of speed on the outside, I don't know how many teams can match that type of speed. I don't know what Georgia Tech's secondary looks like. If you want to try to load the box, go for it. But Malik can run. Chakai can run. Jalen can run. And we haven't even, again, and that's just those guys, right? You ain't even gotten into Elijah Moore and Dwayne McCoy and Hakeem Williams. Some of these bigger body guys, you ain't even gotten into those guys yet. So I don't know if airing it out is the term, but I definitely think play action will be a part of this team. And Briley brings up a great point. We didn't even got to the running backs yet, so I was about to get to next. But Lucas and Lawrence, it's good to bring up them two because they will obviously be used as receivers, as FSU has shown that they'd like to do with Toafili. And I believe Lucas is going to be in the same mold as Lawrence Toafili. And those two guys are, in a lot of ways, just going to be extra receivers on the football field. LT's probably the slowest out of the bunch. Jalen Lucas is just as fast. Jalen Lucas thinks he's the fastest guy on the team. I would love to see a race between Jalen Brown, Jalen Lucas, and Malik Benson, who are probably the 3 fastest guys on the team. I would love to see that race. Sam Singleton might even be in that discussion, and so is Keziah Holmes. Go check the time, the 100-meter time. I think Keziah Holmes is a 10.5 guy, I believe he is. I think Malik, what is Malik, a 10.6 guy? I would love to see none of these guys just go flat out race. Whole bunch of speed on the field. What up, Irv? Irv Wallace says, I appreciate you getting on tonight. Fellow no brother, this game worries me. A lot of unknowns, which is true. I hope they can go out and calm my nerves. Mortalock's going to have a big year. You should get with Rec Talk because he covers Georgia Tech. He can get with me. Have him call my people and I may respond. If we don't beat Georgia Tech by at least 21, that's disappointing. I disagree, but we will continue and I'll tell you why I disagree with that. I disagree. This is Georgia Tech, okay? It's not FAMU. 21 last year, how many teams did FSU beat by 21 ACC opponents? Like that's not a realistic margin. I noticed when Mike Norvell was at Memphis, his wide receivers were not that big, but they made it all the way to the Cotton Bowl and gave Penn State fit. So he had to use what he had to use at obviously Memphis. He didn't recruit the same. I'm excited to see how our linebackers progress and what they can do. We're going to get to the defense here. Let me Danzy might be faster than them all. I don't know if we see a lot of Danzy this year. I don't think you need to rush him out because you just got a stable. But you're right, Danzy could be a weapon if you're able to get him ready to go. Let me skip forward in the chat so I can get back to what we talk about, because we need to get into these running backs, man. And Georgia Tech has a good running back returning. I mean, they got a 1,000-yard carry guy at 6 yards a carry, 7 touchdowns, and Jamal Haynes. I'm gonna combine running back and O-line because this is where it gets interesting for me in this game. And so I'm gonna kind of jump all over the place, but that's just because it's kind of just designed that way when we start talking about the running game. So I'm gonna jump back from offense and defense in this part of this conversation, because this is where it gets really interesting for me. And if Georgia Tech's gonna have a chance, this is where they're gonna have the chance, because they got a good running back returning. They're returning, I believe, 4 out of 5 of their O-linemen, if I'm not mistaken. If not the whole O-line. I think it's 4 out of 5 of the O-line. They may be returning the entire offensive line. Somebody might be able to correct me on that. I think they're returning majority of their O-line. They have an O-line as a O-line head coach. I expect that O-line to be good. Why is I'm going to jump around here? Because that is the only thing that worries me about my defense. It's right up the middle. The first 2 guys are as good as they get. Darrell Jackson is as good as it gets. There was a comparison. Well, I made the comparison because on Twitter, everybody was talking about Zeke Biggers, Georgia Tech defensive tackle, who's 6'6", 320. You know, that's a mountain of a man. That's a big guy in the middle. And I said, well, luckily, FSU had to block number 6 all spring and fall and summer camp. They'll be ready for Zeke Biggers. Not saying Zeke Biggers isn't a good player. They'll be ready for a guy like that because they've had to block that guy all year. So I'm not worried about a Zeke Biggers. What I am saying, though, in terms of Florida State, good as it gets. Joshua Farmer, good as it gets. How many snaps are they going to play? How many snaps is it going to be demanded for them to play? If I'm Georgia Tech and I'm attacking FSU's defense, I know you got all this speed at receiver. You got this electric runner at Haynes King, and you want to do these things. I'm running the football right at them. And it may not be effective in the first quarter. It may not be effective in the second quarter. But if I'm consistently trying to run the ball at Florida State, and I can obviously keep it close, and our defense can do their job against the offense. Now, if FSU starts pulling away on offense, then this strategy just goes out the window. But if it's a close game, I'm trying to wear down those 2 interior guys, because you talk about question marks. I don't know what's behind that. I would love to sit here and tell you Daniel Lyons is going to get in there and stuff the middle just as good as the – I would love to tell you KJ Sampson's going to get in there and be just as effective. I would love to tell you that. I would love to tell you that Durajay can slide inside and be – I would love to say those things. So the truth is, there is no proof, as they say, what's the word? Proof of concept. There's none of that when I take Joshua Farmer and Jackson out the game. And even if you keep him in the game due to necessity, how effective will Joshua Farmer and Jackson be if they are completely gassed? That's my concern with FSU on defense. If those guys behind Jackson and Farmer aren't as effective, you could be in trouble. Again, that's assuming Georgia Tech is able to play decent defense against you, as you know, obviously. So you got a good running back, Georgia Tech. You have a quarterback who ran for, again, it says here 737. I think if you subtract sack yards, then it's down to they ran for over 600 yards and 10 touchdowns. Conventional wisdom says they're going to definitely try to make Haynes King use his legs. That's going to be an interesting I am going to be very interested to see how they utilize him with his legs and how Florida State tries to counter that. I think FSU's linebackers might be a little. I mean, you lost Deloach, but you got Cam Riley. I'd be interested to see FSU's linebackers. Are they a little bit more athletic than last year? I don't think I want DJ Lundy chasing down Haynes King, but can Riley keep up with him is a interesting question, I think. So the running game and that offensive line for Georgia Tech, I think, is a strength for them and can help balance out Haynes King and his turnovers if it's effective. If it's effective, if they can get out there and run the ball on FSU's defensive line, I think we're in for a game. I really do. Then I think we're in for a game. If they can run the ball, that O-line and a pretty good running back and a mobile quarterback. That's not even counting their second string running back and Dante Smith. Is he coming back? Let me see. I know he ran for 504 yards last year. So, he ran for half a bill. So, again, they got a stable. So does Florida State. Florida State has a stable of running backs. And Roydell Williams, obviously. He ran for 560 yards at 5 yards a carry and 5 touchdowns. I expect those numbers to be better. That's solid. He wasn't a full-time guy there. That's only on 111 attempts. So I think he's definitely gonna have more carries this year as he kind of leads that stable of running backs. And then you got Lawrence Toafili, obviously. You know what I didn't do? Jamal Hayes. Let's just look at his measurables real quick, and then I'll get to the comments and see what y'all think about the running back take and the O-line take. Another small guy. So here's where this is getting very interesting. Georgia Tech's a small team. We just looked at a receiving core. They ain't have a guy over 6 foot. Then you go to the running back room. You got a 5'9" guy at 190 pounds. 5'9", 190. Compare that to Roydell Williams. Well, Roydell is 5'10", but he's 214 pounds. And it said that he lost weight. I think he was up to like 220-something at Bama last year. Then you got Roydell. You got Lawrence Toafili, who's 6 foot, but he's on the light side, right? At 196 is what they have him listed as. Where is looking for? Then you got Keziah Holmes, who's 5'11", 215. Then you've got, Sam Singleton, who's 5'11", 195. You've got Jalen Lucas, obviously, who's on the small side. But again, I think he's I say gadget player, not in the terms of disrespect, but he's a guy that they'll put in different situations. Then, of course, you got the freshman, Cam Davis, who is going to be interesting in year one. He's 5'10", 224 pounds. He's a man-child. And I'm interested to see how early they play young Cam Davis. I think FSU has the bigger stable of running backs. Literally and figuratively, FSU has more bodies they can use and bigger bodies they can use in the running back room. But once again, Georgia Tech, where they get the nod, is they have the more productive running back out of all of the running backs. Let's get to the comments and see what y'all think about the run game and the O-line. Actually, the O-line. Both teams wielding both teams are bringing back, again, major offensive line. I want to look at these O-line sizes for Georgia Tech because again, they are bringing back. They got a lot of O-linemen too. I don't even know who the starters are. I'm assuming these seniors and juniors are the starters. They have a shit ton of offensive linemen. So I'm not going to read any of these freshmen because I don't think. But so you got Jordan Brown, 6'5", 315. You got Weston Franklin, 6'4", 310. 6'6", 315, Joe Folsey. 6'5", 305, Corey Robinson. 6'4", 310, Kalen Rutledge. And a 6'6", 315, Jordan Williams. Those are just the upperclassmen, because I'm assuming those are the guys that are going to be. That's a big offensive line, guys. So it's not like they have some undersized guys with a bunch of snaps. No. Again, this is where it gets interesting with the Georgia Tech stuff. They got a legit offensive line. Legit NFL body types. I'm not saying they're NFL players. Haven't watched them to say they're NFL players. But you got guys who are 6'6", and 6'5", 6'4", 315 plus. Compared to FSU's offensive line, I mean, we know we got some horses there. When you look at our guys, Jeremiah Byers, 6'4", 330. Ferguson, 6'4", 330. Keandre, 6'3", 330. Richie, 6'2", 330. So you see a trend here with the FSU offensive line. Ain't nobody coming in under 330 so far. Rizzy, who's not a starter, but he's 6'5", 308. Robert Scott, 6'5", 330. Maurice Smith, 6'3". He's the smallest one. And then Darius Washington, 6'4", 310. FSU's got a legit offensive line as well. I think that's going to be the funnest matchup. Might not be the funnest matchup to watch for the casual football fan, but it might be the most intriguing matchup to watch is just offensive line versus defensive lines in the game. And again, Georgia Tech's got a lot of bodies on that offensive line too. So let's get back to these comments. Watch Georgia Tech film from last year. Their defense leaves the middle wide open. They only were okay around the sidelines, and King was throwing picks against dudes triple covered. Do you think this year's defense, causes more turnovers? That's a great question. And I really haven't given it much thought. But you know what? I think they do. I think the secondary is – they're getting more ball hawks in that secondary. Like a guy that I know everybody knows about, but I think is going to be a little bit more impactful than people maybe realize. I think Earl Little's going to have a real impact in the slot. I think it's going to get to a point where teams won't even throw at Earl Little. I think Earl Little's going to surprise a lot of people. I do. Hold on. What's up, Zay? Don't sleep on Lions. Won't be much less effective than the dinged up version of Fabo that we got last year. Yeah, but see, again, I'm not sleeping on Lions. I just don't know. And if you actually go watch last year, it was to a point where they didn't need Fabo to really because even without Fabo, you still had a Dennis Briggs, you still had a Malcolm Ray. You still had guys. And then, of course, Farmer. So Fabo was able to give you some minutes. We just don't have the same depth because there is no Dennis Briggs. I think Kelly can be a version of Malcolm Ray. But I don't know, man. Again, I'm not sleeping on Lions. I haven't seen it, so it's hard for me to say it. I mean, it would be easy for me to tell you, oh, Lions is going to be whatever he's going to be, but, you know. Their backup running back is Trey Cooley. Oh, because they got a transfer. I think I got a Georgia Tech fan in here. I said you don't have a guy over 6 feet in your wide receiver room. Did I lie about that? Maybe I lied about that. Let me see. Let me check your wide receiver. We have a freshman. If he's going to play, he's 6'4". You have Avery Boyd. Is he going to play? He's 6'3". Your leading receivers is what I was talking about. I said you don't have a receiver over 6 feet from your leading receivers last year. That's true. That's true. What is John talking? You know John. He's just talking. He wants people to talk about Miami. Nobody cares about Miami. Georgia Tech smacked you last year, again, because of your coach. As a matter of fact, y'all want to see that again? I kind of want to see that again. I couldn't get it to play. They changed this whole thing. There, we back. They changed this whole thing on me. I gotta learn this layout that they did on the restream. They changed everything on me. Don't worry, I'll figure it out. Anyway, we know why Miami lost to Georgia Tech. Their left tackle is bad. Is it? I didn't watch them. I'm just going off of the depth chart. Matt J says the whole team's bad. Corey Robinson is not good. What's going on? No, sir, not me. FSU D-line is probably the best of the country. I mean, we have to wait and see. I get it. I get why we think that. Hell, I'm right there with you. But we got to wait and see. Kevin Knowles getting a lot of snaps. I said what I said about Earl Little. He ain't going to make me change that. Yeah, see, I have no way of knowing that because he would have started over Briggs and Ray last year if that was the case. Most likely. So he obviously at that point wasn't better than them. So now we're going to, I'm not mad at y'all for saying and having that faith that these guys are going to be, whatever you think they're going to be, but you got to wait and see. I got to wait and see. Like, the same way I never bought into Darian Williamson and some of these other guys. Like, I just got to wait and see. Avery Boyd. Okay, I ain't even got into the tight ends. Yeah. I'm just going through the comment section. Jeff with a $10 super chat. Thanks for the super chat, my man. He says, we're gonna just wear Georgia Tech down. I think we're more physical on both sides of the ball. Plus all that speed, they won't be able to keep up. So hear that, Georgia Tech fans, if you're in the comments, I see some of y'all chirping and running your mouths, and that's fine. Feel free to do so. But Jeff said what he said, and he ain't taking it back. Ain't no fun when the bunny got the gun. Keep making fun of the Cuban savior. That's your savior? Look at him. Right there at that moment, he knew he fucked up. He knew he did. Right there at that moment, he said, why the hell did I leave Oregon for this dumpster? If that's your savior, you are damned. Damned. Let's keep it pimping. We talked about receivers. We talked about quarterbacks. We talked about O-line. So we pretty much have covered the entire offense. I mean, if we want to get into tight ends, I don't know how Georgia Tech uses tight ends. I'm not going to say and pretend like I do. FSU likes to use a tight end, though I'm not sure if Kyle Morlock I'm not sure. The good thing about Morlock is his size, and I think that he will help DJU in the red zone. So it's going to be interesting to see how FSU likes to implement Morlock. in the red zone, more so in the open field, right? Because he's not a Jaheim Bell. And I'm interested to see. I know what the depth chart says, but I'm interested to see, do they get a Landon Thomas in more of an open field? Is Courtney better in the open field? I know what the depth chart says, but if I see Jackson West in this game, I might blow a head gasket. And again, I can't really speak on tight ends. If I go to last year's stats for Georgia Tech, their tight end, Dylan Leonard, 14 catches, 156 yards, 1 touchdown, 11 yards a catch. I mean, that was their main guy, it looks like, at tight end. They also had this other tight end, and Brett Seether, 7 catches, 101 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So it looks like they like to use actually Brett Seether more in the red zone, potentially, just going off based off numbers. He seemed like to be more of a red zone target than the other guy. FSU's lost, again, they lost Jaheim Bell. A lot of things on the shoulders of Kyle Morlock. Again, he's a big body. He's 6'7". But I'm interested to see how they plan to use a Kyle Morlock. Quick tight end synopsis. Again, I don't really know how they use their tight end. But yeah. And please, yes, hit the like button. Dylan Leonard was a blocking tight end. Okay. So nerd stop. I don't know if you're a Georgia Tech fan, but he says Dylan Leonard is more of a blocking tight end. So the other guy must be your receiving guy. Makes sense. Jackson West about to shut me up. Listen, y'all know me. I do this every year. I hope he does. I'm not rooting against Jackson West. I just believe my eyes. And maybe he can fool me. Maybe he can trick me. And I hope he does. Seether is out for the season. That's not good. Maybe not good. Maybe they have another guy. Again, Georgia Tech fans, if you're here and you think I'm just here to Florida State fans know me. I'm not here just to shit on your team. I'm going to give you an honest analysis on what I see. That's legitimately what I'm going to do. I'm not here to tell you that Georgia Tech sucks at every position. Like I just sat here and said, good offensive line and good running game has me worried in this game. So I just want to be clear to the Georgia Tech fan out there that thinks I'm just here to be like John Shields and just talk trash. That's not really how we rock over here. We talk ball. Now I'm going to throw my shots, but we talk ball on 863 Similar TV. Rambling Zach says, will this guy look up our depth chart? So did these guys transfer out? Like I'm looking at last year's production, my friend. So is Dylan Leonard no longer on the team? Let's see. I'm gonna click on his name. Let's see. Maybe he graduated. He's in the NFL. Dylan Leonard's in the NFL. Shout out to Dylan Leonard. See if there is on your team. He's just hurt. So who did I say that wasn't on the team other than Dylan Leonard, the guy that's in the NFL? So that means, based off this, you don't even have another tight end that's worth a damn, unless you got somebody out the transfer portal. But I get it. Let's nitpick on everything he says. Terrell with a $2 says, need our fan base to shut it and let's play. Need other fan bases to shut it. Sorry. He says, I need other fan bases to shut your mouth. Unfortunately, they don't play ball. But he says, I need y'all's fan bases to shut up and let's play. Appreciate you, Terrell, for the $2. I'm going to bring back an old favorite of mine since I see Miami fans just in here running their mouth. Let's bring back an old favorite.
Bitch, be humble. Sit down. Be humble. Sit down.
So number 9 is the new tight end 1. Thank you, Nerd Stop. Appreciate that. Let's move on to defense. Let's move on to defense. Now, this is where I don't know about Georgia Tech. Like, I don't know what their DBs are like. I'm looking at Clayton Powell-Lee, 6'2", 195. So he's a long, rangy corner. He had one interception last year, 33 solo tackles, 70 total tackles. I don't know, number 5. I don't know if he's their number 1 corner or not. He's got good length on him, obviously, good size at 6'2", 195. I want to start with the secondary before we go into these other guys. Then you got LaMiles Brooks. He's 6'2", 200 out of Jacksonville. He had 1 interception, but he has 6 pass defenses. Maybe he's DB number 1. So it looks like, just off of assumption, again, I don't know if this, it just says DB. I don't know if I'm talking about a safety. I don't know if I'm talking about whatever. You got 2 6'2" DBs on the outside. The question is going to be how fast are they? How physical are they? Can they jam on Malik Benson? Can they run with the Jaylen Brown? Can they run with the Ja'Kai Douglas? I think is going to be an interesting question. And number 1, LaMiles Brooks, and what was it, number 5? The other guy who was number 5, I think it was. They have a name that Florida State fans might know. They have Amari Harvey. Number 3, he had 3 INTs last year out of course, Tallahassee. Amari Harvey's on that team. 6 foot, 190. Looking at their depth chart, they have a type on DB, and I'm here for it. They got a lot of guys 6 foot and above in their secondary. So very similar to us. They want some long, rangy corners, and they have that. They have that. Again, I don't know who all the starters are. I just assume single digits means you're playing a lot of football. So you got Troy Stevenson. Well, he's a freshman, so not him. Sorry, read the wrong name. Rodney Shelley, Tay Seymour, Clayton Powell, Amari Harvey, Warren Burrell, and LaMiles Brooks. Those are probably your main rotation guys in the secondary. Come on, Georgia Tech fans, since you guys are running your mouth about everything else, let me guess, your secondary is elite? Tell me about your secondary. Tell me about your secondary. What do y'all think? What's the secondary? The secondary big time? I like the length of it. You guys got a lot of length. Let me get to the comment section here. I like the length. What's up, Pharrell? Romello Height gonna have a long day versus Darius. We ain't on the D-line yet. Most of the defensive pressure is coming from transfer. Our secondary is very good. Our pass rush and run D was terrible. Should be improved with a brand new staff. New transfers, more depth, and a way better defensive coordinator. They did get the defensive coordinator from Duke. I am aware that you got Mike Elko's defensive coordinator. That's going to be interesting to see. Farrell became a tribal. Shout out to Farrell for joining the 863 tribe. My man, I appreciate you. I'll bring back another old classic because I want y'all to smash the like button.
Fucking ass to sleep. Whoa, shit, what the fuck good buddy hit me with? I told him I wasn't sleepy. He had to have a brick in that bitch.
Secondary is good, not amazing. Front 6, 7, 8 need to prove they're better than last season. Powell, and Brooks are the safeties, one of the best safety duels if our pass rush can improve. Okay. Should be improved because it was ranked 120s. Was the secondary ranked that? Whew. So, Georgia Tech fans, I'm just a messenger. You can read the same chat I'm reading. My Florida State brethren are saying that y'all had the worst DB room in the ACC. You guys are telling me you have a very good DB room. Ranked in the 120s is pretty. That's nasty work. It's nasty work. Georgia Tech gave up 635 yards to UNC last year. These Georgia Tech fans are hilarious. Again, I'm just a messenger, guys. I'm just a messenger. No cap. Y'all should win something like 24-10. $34-17, and yes. Okay. So FSU secondary. Now this is, I mean, I think every FSU fan is completely co-sign what I'm about to say. This probably is the least. This is probably the one position on the team that nobody's worried about is FSU's DB room. DBU. It is what it is. Because you're bringing, you're. I mean, yes, you lost Jerry and you lost Renardo and you lost Keem, but arguably you might be replacing those guys with just flat out better players. And I mean, obviously we know AZ, we know Fentrell. You bring back Shaheem. I don't like the fact that I'm looking at my depth chart and it's telling me that Devontae Brown is the starting safety. I would much rather like to see Conrad Hussey there. But I said this last year, at the beginning of last year, where I was worried about the safety room because we rotate safety so much. I expect a very healthy rotation in that safety room. So I think obviously Shaheem, but I think Conrad will get plenty of snaps next to Devontae Brown and Shaheem. Then you got Amarion Cooper, who's also a safety. It's going to be interesting to see how they work Amarion into that safety rotation. We went from last year to barely having any safeties. So we got too many safeties this year. And that's not even talking about a guy like Kirkland. Then you got Quindarius Jones, so I think it's a sleeper in that room. I think a lot of FSU fans would agree with that. Edwin Jones is another sleeper in that room. We talked about Earl Little. You got Kevin Knowles. If he's in the slot, I'm cool with that. Better not ever see him play safety again. And they're actually saying Kevin Knowles is playing a lot better in his natural position. I would look for Earl Little to eventually take that job by the horns. And, of course, I don't even have to get into all of the freshmen that Ricky Knight has. They say he's flashing. They said Bates has been maybe the best, the most consistent freshman in practice. And I think Jamari Howard, is he out for the year? He's hurt or something like that. So we won't get to see Jamari Howard this year, most likely. Not worried about our secondary at all. Now, Georgia Tech definitely poses like an interesting thing there where, again, they got those small, fast receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see how FSU matches those guys. We play man. That's what we do. You ask Adam Fuller, you ask Pat, we play man. That's primarily what we're in. Are we trying to put hands? Is Daisy going to play off? Is he going to play up? Is he going to try to jam these little receivers? Are they going to be worried about the speed, so play off? Interesting to see how we play man, but at the end of the day, we're going to play man coverage against these receivers. It's interesting to see how they attack it. Let's move on. We're going to make our way from the top down. So linebackers, Georgia Tech fans, since you're here, by the way, if you're here, hit the like button and subscribe. You don't have to watch me. Just subscribe. I'd appreciate it. Hit my like button if you don't mind and subscribe. It didn't hurt nobody. It don't cost you nothing. You're here. You're chopping it up with me. You might as well show some love. Anyway, we're going to go to the linebacker room. I don't know much about these linebackers at Georgia Tech. I know last year their leading tackler was Kyle Efford. sophomore. So I'm assuming he was a freshman last year. 6'2", 230, 37 solos, a sack, 1 INT. He had 81 total tackles. That is their leading tackler from last year. I don't want to get yelled at in the comments, so I'm not going to assume he's their best guy at the linebacker position, and I also don't know who you brought in the portal. Hold up, going back to the roster. There we go. But they've got. I'm just going to go over some names, and Georgia Tech fans, you tell me if they're good or not. You got a bunch of freshmen, so they recruited the backers. You got a bunch of freshmen. Any of these freshmen plan on playing for Georgia Tech? You got Nakari Ashley, Taj Butler, Drew Cohen, Jack Collins. Sorry. Then you got a sophomore in Jacob Cruz. You got Austin Dean from Tampa, Florida, junior. Caleb Dozer, freshman. Baylor Duncan. We already talked about Kyle Effort. He's their leading tackler. Janorian Foots, Miles Forrestall, Jackson Hamilton, Luke Laughter. That's a funny name. Pun intended. EJ Lightsey. That name sounds familiar. Where do I remember EJ Lightsey from? I think FSU was recruiting this kid at one point. That name sounds super familiar. Sophomore. Is he your guy? Chuma Okoye, Lawson Pritchett. I couldn't see the R there. And I'm not even going to try. Tatum, number 0 Tatum. That's a doozy. Trenius. Yeah. Anyway, Tatum. All right, Georgia Tech fans. Which one of those linebackers should FSU be worried about? Which one of those linebackers? I'm gonna take a drink. Which one of those linebackers is the guy that we should be worried about? Taj Butler will play. He's like 4th or 5th linebacker on the depth chart. Okay. Kyle Effort is a starting Mike. Tatum is linebacker 2. We got some transfer pieces in Jackson Hamilton and Lightsey. Lightsey ended up going to Georgia. I didn't know that. Says that's a horrible unit. He's just talking. Is it really? Kyle Effort is start. Okay, you already read that one. Georgia Tech linebackers are not only a weakness; they're also ripe for a mismatch. Getting guys from our backfield lined up on linebackers will be key. Like I said, middle wide open. Well, again, I don't know much about these linebackers other than what I see here. I'm not going to waste too much time on their linebackers. I will go to Florida State's linebackers, who our linebackers are a bit of a question. I think FSU fans, we feel very good about, obviously, Cam, Lundy. I feel pretty good about Blake Nicholson personally. I think Blake Nicholson is in for a very solid year. I'm not going to say he blows up into, I don't know, Brian Urlacher or something. But I think Blake is going to show that growth. Omar Graham, we'll see. And then, of course, Cryer. That's probably the main rotation at backer right there. I mean, I don't know what you're going to get out of Sean Murphy. I would love for Sean Murphy to be like the guy, but he wasn't even listed on the depth chart. I don't think that doesn't mean he doesn't play, but probably primarily, a special team guy. So Yeah, Cam Riley, Blake Nicholson. I think obviously in the 4-2-5, we're running Riley and Lundy, and then I think first off the bench is I think Blake, and then probably Omar and Cryer, some combination of that. What do you think, Florida State fans? How you feeling about the linebacker room? I think there's some questions. However, I think getting Cam Riley was huge because without Cam Riley, then you're probably forcing to start a Blake Nicholson or Omar Graham or Cryer or Justin Cryer. With Cam Riley now, you can start him next to DJ Lundy, and you got a pretty solid starting two there. How are we feeling about the linebacker room? I think I'm just more worried about what comes off the bench for Florida State as far as the linebackers go. But I like our two. Our two starters I'm cool with. Lundy 6'1", 241. And then, of course, Cam Riley 6'5", 237. I agree with you, nerd. And again, I appreciate you for stopping by as a Georgia Tech fan. Sean Murphy was the worst take. I think you're jumping the gun there. He's only a sophomore. To say he was a terrible take, okay, he might not produce right away. Doesn't mean he was a terrible take. We may eventually be able to get something out of him. I don't know. But it ain't like we're recruiting 4 and 5 stars in the linebacker room. So definitely not a terrible take. You take bodies and you coach them up. That's what we've been doing. So no, don't agree with Sean Murphy being a terrible take. Isn't Murphy just a sophomore? He is just a sophomore. Sean isn't even on the depth chart. He's not on the 2 deep. That don't mean he won't play. Don't mean he won't definitely be. You got to have guys to play special teams. Jeff says, I'm pretty comfortable who we have at backer. Now, it might not be quite as good as last year's. I think it's a solid unit. Yeah, probably not as good as last year's. Though I think Cam Riley might be as athletic as any of those other guys from last year. I think Cam Riley definitely more athletic than Bethune. Deloach is obviously questionable. Kalen Deloach. Deloach was also a little undersized, but it worked out. For a guy his size, Cam Riley can move, and he can move in space. So I'm interested to see how they use him. And then we know DJ, he's a downhill thumper. And they'll probably be using him more so blitz. A lot of the ways they used him last year. It's going to be interesting to see DJ because he wasn't asked to start. He was asked to come off the bench, and we protected DJ. And I've always said DJ is an effective player if you protect him. Because he's not really a sideline-to-sideline backer. So if you protect him, he can be effective. Now I don't want to say concerned is not the right word, but I'm very intrigued to see DJ play constantly. And they might still use him in packages if a guy like Blake Nicholson comes along. Some of these other guys. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I agree about the recruiting, but Omar and Juice Cryer were 3 stars, and they passed Sean Murphy. Well, Sean Murphy went to Bama. Did they pass on Sean Murphy, or did he went to Alabama? Like I don't know if you can say we passed on him, or if Nick Saban just got him. You know what I'm saying? I agree with that. We had like 3 guys last year. I actually absolutely agree with that. We have like 5. So we definitely have some better depth at the backup position. Or guys that we think can play. For sure. Am I the only one that wants to see Otto come in for Byers if Byers is bad? Well, it probably won't be Otto. It'll probably be Robert Scott. I think if you want to go all the way back to the offensive line, if you want to watch something, let's see if Robert Scott can push Byers. Let's just see how that dynamic plays. I'm interested to see that. If Byers isn't doing well, do you throw Robert Scott out there? And how does Robert Scott look after being hurt like for so long? So I'm not confident that Lundy is healthy. I'm thinking we see a lot of Riley and Blake. I ain't mad at that. I have very high hopes for Blake Nicholson. I think he's an athlete. So I ain't mad at that. I'm not mad at that. If we see a trick play from Georgia Tech before the second half, Georgia Tech fans, let that be a clear sign how your coaches feel. And then he laughed at Robert Scott. Probably will be good for 2 drives, but I think that's where they'll go with it. Defensive line, let's move straight down. We talk Georgia Tech. We continue to talk. So I'm looking at the Georgia Tech defensive line. We already talked about Zeke Biggers. And, again, big kid. Not saying he's a bad player. Not saying he isn't an effective player. He's 6'6", 320. What I am saying is that doesn't concern me because FSU blocks a 6'6", 330-pounder themselves every single practice. And I don't know what Biggers runs, but I think they clocked Darrell Jackson at 6'5", 6'6", 330 pounds at like 20 miles an hour. So I don't know what Biggers run. I don't know what kind of athlete he is. He's a big body, but I don't know if he's the athlete that Darrell Jackson is. FSU's O-line will not, I don't think, be intimidated by Zeke Biggers. Some other notable guys on that defensive line. I'm just clicking on some of the more. Got Kevin Harris, the second, 1 sack, 14 solo tackles. That's one guy. You got Romello Heights, a 6'3", 240 pounder. He had 4 sacks last year. Okay. You got another big interior guy here in Horace Lockett. Now he's a sophomore. Don't know if he saw a lot of playing time. He had 8 solos, 22 tackles total. No sacks or anything like that. That's another big guy, a depth guy. I'm sure he's a depth guy, and a guy that's probably going to take over for Biggers once he leaves. You got Marcus Scott. No sacks, but he did have a forced fumble last year. He's a 6'4", 290-pound, I'm assuming, interior guy. Jordan Vandenberg, 6'3", 305. Not a lot of production on this D-line. Like, I'm looking. If there's if you guys are still in the chat, Georgia Tech fans, please who are your transfers that you guys ended up getting? I'm just curious. Who are you guys expecting to come in and kind of change the I don't see a lot of production here on this defensive line. They got Thomas Gore. If you guys remember that name, I know Miami fans will remember that name. Because that guy transferred from Miami. He was at Georgia State, I think, and then he transferred from Miami last year. So you got Thomas Gore, but Thomas Gore wasn't great at Miami either. So I think FSU actually clowned Miami for that take. Not saying he won't be good for you guys. I'm just saying, not a lot of production here on the defensive line. Where in contrast, it's a heavyweight battle, I think, between FSU's D-line and Georgia Tech's offensive line, right? I think that's going to be a fun matchup. I would argue FSU's O-line might just maul this D-line into the ground. FSU might be able to run the ball at will. I don't know. We'll see. But I'm not overly impressed by what I'm seeing on that defensive line right now. Nurses, I couldn't tell you anyone outside of Biggers. Like I said, transfers in and out, plus bringing guys in as freshmen. Appreciate that, Nurse. You being honest with me, and I love it. He said, oh, it's the only one I can tell you. I agree. D-line don't look that impressive. I think Bradley's responding to somebody there. Heard anything on Hakeem? I think Hakeem got a little dinged up in the offseason. I think he'll play, though. Won't start, but I think he'll play. What's up, Grand Champ? Come in and show that love. Serious means out for the game period of time. What's up with Dustin being out for the season? But, bro, not only is he still practicing, I'm watching him. He's traveling with the team. If you haven't noticed, he's in Ireland. He's in Ireland. And from what I've seen, he doesn't have anything on his knee. Dustin might not be out for the season, but we'll see. Hearing hamstring on Hakeem, also almost back, but I think the depth chart tells it maybe another week. Romello Heights, their big transfer guy. Okay, and he's really not that good. Tiny D tackle from Miami. What up, RA? 120th defense. Georgia Tech didn't give us much to talk about, unfortunately. I think Gore got buried in the depth. Nerd, I got to be honest with you. The interior of their D-line last year wasn't good. So I don't know if he got buried or not. But Ruben Bain is great, but he's an edge. They had Leonard Taylor. I think didn't Leonard Taylor go undrafted? I don't know. Miami's interior defensive line was not good last year. And if Gore couldn't crack that rotation, man, I'm not so sure. Honestly. Imagine seriously doesn't mean nothing. We have a lot of speed at receiver. We already talked receiver, Psycho Seminole, but we do. We have. So does Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's got a lot of speed, but so do we. Yeah. So when we talk D lines, I'm gonna get into ours here in a second. Yeah, I'm not looking at Georgia Tech. If there's one glaring weakness, it's got to be your D line. Now you go to Florida State's D line. Tamawa Durage, 6'4", 280. He had 3.5 sacks last year. He's a transfer, actually, a guy who will play inside and out for us. And he transferred from West Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. I think he first transferred to West Virginia. Didn't play at Kentucky, from my understanding. So, that's a transfer guy, 4 sacks. Not a starter. Then, of course, you go to Joshua Farmer. I mean, he wanted a better interior defensive lineman in the country. 5 sacks last year from the D tackle position. 32 tackles, 1 forced fumble. Yeah. If you don't know who he is, you will know who he is come game day. Going to go over, of course, we talk about Darrell Jackson. Didn't play at all last year. Well, take that back. He played in the Georgia game. He played in the bowl game. It was the only game he was eligible for, but he's 6'5", 330-pound monster. Last time he saw consistent playing time on the field, you're talking about 2 years ago, because he didn't play last year. He had 27 total tackles, 3 sacks, and 1 pass defense. Then, of course, the big one, Marvin Jones Jr. Now, unproven as far as statistically goes, but has every measurable, 6'5", 255, has every measurable you want. Last year's stats at Georgia, 12 tackles, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. So in that limited amount of time, he actually kind of stuffed. He did fill the stat sheet. Expect him playing opposite of Pat to be, yeah. I want to bring up Grady Kelly. He's a transfer guy on that interior, a guy that we got from – he's a Florida native, but a guy that we were able to get to transfer from Colorado State. Again, I don't have big expectations for Grady Kelly. If he can just come in and be an effective rotation player, it's a win. Uh, Last year, he finished with 10 solo tackles and a sack and a half, 35 total tackles. Again, I'm not a lot of expectations there, in my opinion. Anything you get is a plus. Sione, that's a guy that you might want to pay attention to. He's not a sack master at defensive end. He's going to control the run game. He was all Pac-12 last year. You're talking about 46 tackles, a sack and a half, 2 forced fumbles. He had 24 solo tackles. And again, not a sack guy, but FSU didn't bring him in to get to the passer because we got guys that can get to the passer. And the main guy that can get to the passer, a guy that's going to continue the lineage of Jermaine. Well, it's before Jermaine, but just in the Mike Norvell era. But of course, we can go back to Peter Boulware. We already know the lineage of FSU pass rushers: Everett Brown, Bjorn Warner, Tank Carradine, and the list goes on. But in the Mike Norvell era, Jermaine Verse, and now it's the Patrick Payton, 6'5", 250, out of Miami, Florida. Last year, 7 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 43 tackles, 28 solos, and I think he had like double-digit swats, like 9 pass defenses. Sorry, there it is right here. So if he can't get to you, he'll at least get the ball down. So Pat looks to take that next leap on the defensive line. And Marco says Georgia Tech's QB is the truth for real. Look, Haynes King can do some things, but 16 interceptions, man, is 16 interceptions. And that's the only guy that I know that's thrown 16 interceptions. And yet everybody in the media is acting like this dude can't do no wrong. 16 picks is 16 picks. That's a lot of turnovers. He better, if he wants to be the truth, he better clean that up. And see, Nerd Stop, great Georgia Tech fan here. He's been honest. He's been real. Just needs to fix up the interception issues. But he's got some tools, don't get me wrong. But he's got to get rid of the interception issues. No Sir Not Me says their secondary is solid. So some Florida State fans think the secondary is solid. Some think they're trash. I think their secondary looks like it has some solid pieces. Again, I don't know how those pieces play, but they look solid. They're a zone team. I think FSU could be in a bit, not a lot, trouble if by some miracle Georgia Tech's D-line is as improved as people say, which I don't really expect. But who knows? This is college football. This is the thing about college football. I think it makes the game more interesting for sure. If y'all can actually, if that defensive line is better than what it's being, like what I'm seeing. But again, FSU's O-line isn't just gonna. FSU's O-line, we've come a long way on the offensive line. We've got one of the better units. So, and you got to remember, FSU's O-line blocks FSU's D-line on a regular basis. So, I'm not to dismiss what you're saying, because I absolutely agree. Like, if your D-line can play up to par, you got a real football game here. It's just a big if. If Stan Tucci is as good as people make him to be as a coach, I believe in these guys. The thing about coaches, though, does Stan Tucci, and I'm assuming that's the new defensive coordinator, does he have all his guys, though? How long is it going to take for Georgia Tech to get his personnel on that defense? That would be the question I have. And see, Mr. Orr kind of brings up my point where he's like, he had guys on that Duke defense last year that were his guys. You have to ask yourself, how long does he already have those guys? And if not, how long does it take? How do special teams compare? That's a great question, John. Give me a second. I want to get some more to comments, and then maybe we'll look at special teams because the last time we played Georgia Tech the freaking blocked field goal. Is that real? I think that's actually, somebody help me out. That's the last time we played Georgia Tech. So as you know, special teams, man, can make or break a game. And I believe the last time we played Georgia Tech, if unless I'm mistaken, was the blocked field goal that went for 6. Unfortunately. So, yeah, maybe we will look at special teams here. I think they're going to have to. I think you got to switch it up, Tyler. Obviously, we know about the speed, but they're gonna have to at least get some big bodies in on the secondary at some point, against that secondary at some point. So I wouldn't be surprised if Elijah Moore got 5 or 6 plays. It doesn't mean he gets 5 or 6 targets, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the game for 5 or 6 plays or something like that. Yeah, that's right. We did play Georgia. It's crazy that I don't remember that because to this day, that is still the most watched video I have on my channel. Is the post Georgia Tech rant. It's crazy that I don't. I should remember that. You're absolutely right. Mike Norvell's first game, we lost to Georgia Tech, and that is still the most watched. That is the most watched game. That's the most watched video on my channel. Is that game where I let him have it, and that's when we knew we would suck that year. You're absolutely right, man. I can't believe I didn't remember that. All right, let's get to the special teams. Now I don't know how good your kicker is. I'll let Nerd tell you. You got three kickers on the roster. So which ones? And they're 2 freshmen and the sophomore. I'm gonna assume the sophomore is the starter. Who's the starting kicker? Okay, I think it's Aiden Burr. He was about 90% last year, along with 48, and 97% on extra points. Solid guy. I'm assuming that's your kicker. Aiden Burr, sophomore. Now, I know FSU has one of the best punters in the country. Fitz had a great bounce back year last year, Ryan Fitzgerald. Senior kicker for Florida State. He was 90% on field goals, along with 48, and he was 100% on extra points. So he did not miss an extra point. Kicking's probably even. Just based off of those metrics, I would say the kicking game is even. You guys got a pretty solid kicker. FSU's got a really solid kicker. I think FSU probably has the edge at punter. I don't know about Georgia Tech's punter, but Mastromanno is probably one of the better punters in the country. And then return game is going to be interesting. Return game is going to be super interesting because you got Malik Benson, I think, returning punts. I like that move. And I would love to see like a combination of like LaWayne McCoy, Deuce Spann, Keziah Holmes or something like that returning kicks. FSU, I think, will be a pretty solid return team. I don't know who's returning stuff for Georgia Tech. I'm assuming one of those shifty receivers would be my assumption. But I think FSU's got a pretty good return team on both punt. Granted, we have to see. We've been kind of hit or miss sometimes in the punt game. But Deuce Spann, who's shown that that's where he's going to make his mark on this team as a kick returner. Then you pair him with, again, I heard LaWayne McCoy's been doing great things. FSU played Sam McCall at kick and punt return, and he was absolutely god-awful. If LaWayne McCoy's everything that we're hearing, throw that freshman out there, man, and let him play because I'm not mad at it at all. And then you got Jalen Lucas. Again, I remember Jalen Lucas is going to be returning punts, not Malik Benson. Though I think I did see something about Malik Benson returning some punts too. So it might be a combination of those two guys. So I think we're good. I think we're good in the kick return game, punt return game for sure. Mari Harvey, Anthony Carr going to be punt return and kick return respectively. Long snapper is getting his master's right now. Well, shout out to that. Shout out to that. So that is a position by position pretty much breakdown. Now, if that wasn't good enough for you, I'm sorry. But I thought that was pretty good stuff, man. And like, real quick, edge, quarterback, Haynes King, DJU. I'm going to be honest with y'all. Like, 16 picks is 16 picks. I think Haynes King is more dynamic, but that doesn't make him better. What Haynes King has going for him is he has that continuity. He's throwing to the same receivers. He's got the same running back and the same offensive line. I think that is important. But 16 picks is 16 picks. DJU has a new everything, new O-line. Well, it's a senior O-line for Florida State, but this is his first time playing with it. So DJU's first time playing with the O-line, running back, and receivers. Yet, he's a little bit more consistent. He doesn't turn the ball over, okay? I'm going to be fair because my man Nerd Stop, Georgia Tech fan, he's been in the chat the entire time. I'm going to be fair, and I'm going to call this one even. I'm not going to give – there are things that Haynes King can do that can blow this game open. And there's also things that Haynes King can do that is going to put Georgia Tech in a hole that they may not be able to bounce back from. And I think that's fair analysis. As far as DJU goes, he doesn't turn the ball over, but if Florida State finds themselves behind in this game, are we going to count on DJU to pull us out? I don't know. That's a question mark. Since there's question marks on both sides, I'm going to say quarterback is even. That's just me. I'm going to say quarterback is even. I'm going to be fair here and say quarterback is even. Running backs. They've got the leading returning rusher for them. And was it Hayes? I forget his name off the top of my head just that quick. Matter of fact, let's just go back to the stats. Jamal Hayes, I think it was. Yep, Jamal Hayes. And then you got Dante Smith, who had added an extra 500 yards to that. So I'm pretty sure Georgia Tech, with that offensive line, feels pretty good about their running game. I think Florida State, y'all know how we feel about our running game. We got legit horses in that backfield as well. Based on production, you would have to give the edge to Georgia Tech. But I think based off talent, I think Florida State has the better group here. We can agree to disagree, but I can't give you the edge in running back just because I think FSU has more weapons to throw. And maybe there's some guys maybe that I don't know about other than Jamal Hayes and Dante Smith that I should be worried about. You got a guy like Trey Cooley, maybe. FSU goes a legit 4 or 5 deep at running back, and it doesn't matter, I think, who we throw out there. I think they're going to be productive. So I'm going FSU the nod at the running back position. Wide receiver, I will give the nod to Georgia Tech. Both receiving cores are fast, but Georgia Tech has the actual legit production and the benefit of playing with their quarterback, with Eric Singleton, Malik Rutherford, Blaylock, and Leary. Now, they're all small guys. Again, they don't have a receiver over 6 foot. Singleton's 5'11". Rutherford, I think, is 5'10", 5'9", so even shorter than I thought. Blaylock is, I think, another 5'11" guy. Oh, Blaylock was the one guy they did not, at least here, they didn't put his measurables. And again, I'm not going to search for it, so whatever. And then Leary, I think, is a 5'10" guy. Yeah, 5'10". So there's that, but I'll give the edge to Georgia Tech in terms of receivers. So right now, I probably should write this down so I don't forget. Right now, it is even at QB. QB's even. Running backs, FSU. Receivers, which I will include tight ends into that. I'm going to give that nod to Georgia Tech. O-line. I might draw the O-line even too. I'm not going to lie. Again, you guys are returning a legit unit. FSU's returning a legit unit. I will give a definite even to O-line. I can't say who's better than who. Just based off returning production. FSU's returning all their guys. Y'all returning all y'all's guys. You got an O-line coach for a head coach. So, got it. D-line is not even, honestly, guys, it's not even close. Florida State has the edge at D-line, and it's really not even a discussion. I think Florida State has the edge at backer. Again, this is just based off today's discussion. And DB room, maybe Georgia Tech's DB room is better than we think because the front seven for that team was so bad that the DB room was always kind of behind. And even if that's the case and that DB room is better, it's not better than AZ and Cypress and Little and no. FSU has the edge almost across the board at defense. With that being said, I got to predict a score. So, again, I think that's fair analysis, Georgia Tech fans. I know if you don't – I know. But, I mean, tell me where I'm wrong. I gave you said the QB rooms are even. I gave you wide receivers. I said the O-lines are even. But, I mean, there's no legit argument defensively that you can say any defensive group that Georgia Tech is fielding is better than any defensive group that Florida State's fielding. There's no legit argument. No legit argument. It depends, but if FSU stays in themselves and doesn't try to get drastic fast, they can win this game 20-10. But if they get into a shootout, I think it could go either way. A shootout would be concerning for me. If FSU was to get in a shootout with Georgia Tech, I'd be very concerned about that. How many that's a great question. How many INTs does Haynes throw? I can say for a fact that DB room is better than it seems, but FSU's DBs are better even still. See, fair analysis there. Overall offense goes to Tech. Again, I think the offenses are even. Unless you think, John, and I know you're a Miami fan, so there's not a lot of thinking going on. Unless you think that Haynes King is like DJ's here and Haynes King is here. If that's your argument, I think it's a silly one, but okay. That's the only legit. Unless you just think Haynes King is going to go from 16 to 8 interceptions and all that stuff, then okay. I can't. Remains to be seen, but okay. Other than that, I think the offenses are fairly even across the board. Because Haynes King has some strengths, but he's got some major weaknesses. I think DJ has some strengths and some major weaknesses. So, running backs, FSU, but wide receivers, Georgia Tech, O-lines are even. Even offenses, in my opinion. Put me down for 34-17. Okay. So, Terrence, what's up? He says 34-17 is his prediction. $34-10 for some of you guys. So, a lot of you guys, I see your scores. And this is where I drop a score that might disappoint some people. But you know me, I'm honest, and I'm going to stick to what I believe. I thought about this, and I came to this score about 2 days ago. I think the first half of this game, I think FSU's offense is going to struggle to find – I think they're going to run the ball, but I think on the obvious pass downs, I think is where they'll struggle initially. I do. I'd be surprised if FSU came out and was just clicking on offense. That talk about how FSU was the first 2 weeks at the receiving core, I think it will rear its head in this game. I think there will be some wrong routes ran, miscommunication between receivers and DJ. Might even be some drop passes as they get some of that anxiety out their system. I think at halftime you're looking at a score at like 10-7. Either way, I'll be honest with you, 10-7 either way. I think FSU's going to be able to run the ball, but I don't know if they're going to be able to convert that stuff into points. I'm just going to be honest with you. This is just how I see it. I hope I could be wrong. I think by the end of the first half, I think you're looking at a score of like 10-7 or 13-7 or 13-10 or something like that. Very low scoring, not very eventful, because I think our defense is going to be fairly stout. They're going to prepare for Haynes King running the ball. They're going to give him looks. They're going to try to confuse him. They're going to try to get him to turn the ball over. I think in the second half is where you wear them down. I think in the second half is where that running game, where in the first half, maybe you were running for 5-6 yards of carry, but you weren't really breaking the big run. I think in that second half is where you break the big run. I think in that second half is where that 6-yard run turns into a 20-yard run. And as that defense that I'm not sure has a lot of depth, that D-line that I'm not sure has a lot of depth, those linebackers that I'm not sure has a lot of depth, when that starts to rear its ugly head in Roydell, because FSU's going to rotate damn near all of their backs, you can believe that. And when Roydell's coming in the game fresh, and Singleton's coming in the game fresh, and Keziah Holmes is coming in the game fresh, I think that's where we'll pull away. Ultimately, I have a score of 27-10 Florida State. That is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking 27-10 Florida State. I think it's going to take a while for that offensive passing game to get in a rhythm. I don't expect it to get in a rhythm game one. If it does, Georgia Tech might get blown out. I don't expect it. 27-10 is my game prediction for FSU, Georgia Tech in Dublin, Ireland. And I know I see some of the scores. I don't see how FSU scores 40, again, unless DJU and his receivers are just on point. Unless DJU and his receivers are just on point, I don't see a 40-point game. I think people that are thinking these high-scoring games, and like I'm looking at Mr. Orr, and he's going 27 points is disappointing. I don't see how that's disappointing. This isn't last year's team where you brought back Jordan Travis and Johnny Wilson and Trey Benson. Like the skill position players last year were not only were they arguably NFL players, so that they were better, they were more they were proven. And they had that consistency, they had that cohesion, that word that I love to talk about. They had the cohesion. The only player that didn't have that was Keon. And you kind of saw how that ended up playing out as the season went on when we started trying to force Keon stuff. But I told y'all at the beginning of last year that we would blow LSU out. If you remember the my prediction for the LSU game, I said I have a feeling we're going to blow that team out because we had all of that. We don't have any of that this year. Jaylen Brown, Mike Malik, these guys haven't played. So to come out and expect a 40-point game, I think is you can be a Florida State fan. And I know how some of y'all do. Some of y'all put expectations super high. So when they don't meet them, you can go, we're not as good as some of y'all fans are like that. I don't understand that, but some of y'all, live y'all's lives like that. I don't again, every new quarterback, new skill position guys. 40 points in the first time playing together is a pipe dream in my opinion. Like 42-17 is, I mean, I'm not mad at it. If you can do it, let's do it. I just don't see it. There will be no shootout. Nick Saban thinks we're a top 5 talented team. I'm so hyped tomorrow. Go Noles. True. Mike has been in his bag. Mike has been in his bag the last 2 week 0 games. Going to be an ugly second half, Jeremy Martin thinks. 27 points would be disappointing. This is the worst defense we play all year. Yeah, but it's also the first time the offense is getting on the field together. If he has a hell of a day, then y'all will be right. If he has a hell of a day, then you'll absolutely be right. Then I will be wrong on my prediction. But I don't think 27. I don't think a 17-point win is ew. I think that's crazy to say that. The people saying you don't believe in the offense. I don't believe in the offense game one. I think these things take time to work themselves out. I don't expect new pieces to come in and hit the ground running. I'd be glad to be proven wrong. I'm picking 27-10. I'm picking a 17-point win, but apparently that's just not good enough. Is Georgia Tech the best offensive team we play this year? Nah. Miami should have a better offense than Georgia Tech. Based on quarterback play, Miami probably should have a better offense, arguably. What about SMU's offense? Might be better than Georgia Tech's. Damn sure won't be Clemson. I'm not sure I believe in a Notre Dame-led Leonard team, so I can't go there. By the way, I gotta do our predict the record, and then I'm gonna get out of here. I just want to get to the rest of the comments, though. Appreciate you, Nerd Stop. I'm not even a fan of DJU. I hear you. I just don't think anything about that defense. And again, this isn't a, and I hate to say it like this isn't a Georgia Tech thing, but as in most cases, when you're talking about whether it's elite fighters, just elite teams in general, a lot of times it's your biggest enemy isn't the person across from you. It's yourself. And that's what I think the offense is going to find in this first game. I don't think it's anything Georgia Tech's necessarily going to do. Like I said, miscommunication on routes, drop passes, just those self-induced injuries that a team Jaylen Brown starting for the first time, there's going to be some hiccups. And so that's just the way I look at it. Yeah, but this is a new year, though. It's a new year, so you can't judge it off of last year. I get you, but you still got to get out there and guys still got to play. No, I disagree. Georgia Tech is one of the worst rushing defenses in the nation. FSU is one of the best rushing offenses this year. 40 is reasonable. I mean, that's fair. If you think Florida State is going to just run, that's fine. That also means that the game's going to go faster, too. Though college football has implemented the 2-minute warning, which I absolutely hate, I think they need to get that out of here. But if you think 40 is reasonable, I just don't. How many times did FSU's offense last year break 40? That's probably a great question to ask. How many times last year did FSU's offense break 40? LSU, obviously. I mean, not counting the bottom tier teams, but you didn't break 40 against Boston College, Clemson. Virginia Tech had 39, so we'll count it. Pitt only had 24. Miami only had 27. 40 had 24. Now, granted, Florida game I'm not even going to really count. Yeah, 41 against Wake, 38 against Duke. Would we say that Duke has a way better defense than this Georgia Tech team? Again, and this was a seasoned FSU offense. This was a Jordan Travis FSU offense. This was a Keon Coleman, Johnny Trey. That offense was different than this offense. So as you can see, 40, you don't just walk. This ain't 2013. You don't just walk out and get 40 points. I don't see where this offense is throwing up 40 points in a game one. I get that. that Drake May. That's a Drake May offense. Drake May's gone too. Like, y'all are kind of making my point. Like, veteran quarterbacks are important. DJ's a veteran, but he hasn't been here. Honestly, man, I hope Mike calls games a little better this year. Last year, I mean, we talked about it at length last year, Tyler. Anybody with a brain knew we were forcing balls last year. Go check 2022 compared to, 2022 compared to last year, which was 2023. Yeah, so go compare the year before to last year and how seamless the offense was. How it just ran like a well-oiled machine. I hate to bring it up, but go watch 45-3 and watch how that offense just was. And it was like that for majority. Even the Louisville game would take Rodemaker. Like, go watch that offense compared to last year, and you could tell we were forcing things. We were trying to appease a guy that was a transfer portal major win for us. But I think that came with some stipulations, and that's what they tried to do. I don't think that'd be the case this year. I do think we'll call plays more in the flow of a game, which could lead to obviously a better offense. I just don't think that works out or happens instantly. Now that could change the score for sure. If Haynes King's throwing a bunch of picks or even one or two, that could definitely change the score. But again, I'm sticking with 27-10. I think 27-10 is the way I'm still going that way. It's definitely belt to ass season though. All right, man, let's do it. I'm gonna get into my season prediction, man, and I gotta get up out of here. Well, I don't have to get up out of here, but I'm hungry, so I'm gonna get up out of here. Again, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Georgia Tech fans, please. By the way, Georgia Tech fans, you're gonna get your I do halftime updates for the game, so you'll get that. And I go live right after the game, so I'll be here live right after the game if you want to come kick it again. The Florida State schedule, the more you look at it, I think the less easy it looks. With that being said, I've gone back and forth on Florida State's schedule. I'll start it like this. I think it's easy to say the ceiling is undefeated. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of accurate because you can say that for any team. Like, the best you can do is undefeated. And the worst you can do is defeated. But legitimately here, when you look at Florida State and you look at this schedule, a lot of it has to do with also the way it's laid out. Georgia Tech, Boston College, Memphis, Cal, SMU. That's all before October. There is not a team that I just named that I can pick over Florida State. So FSU should start the season 5-0. Then you have the big game against Clemson, but you got them at home. That is the game, that's one of those, that's Clemson, right? It's not until you get to late October, kind of really that November skit or stint. Okay, you got October 6th, you got Clemson. If you can win that game, now you're 6-0. Then you have Duke. I think Duke is going to be an interesting team because they got the quarterback from Texas, who I actually like. You got Manny Diaz over there now, but it's Duke. At the end of the day, it's Duke. I'm not worried about Duke. Assuming you're 7-0 or even 6-1 going into the stretch of Miami, North Carolina, Notre Dame, and Florida, that's where I think is the difference between 9-3 or like 11-1 or 12-1, right? Or 11-1, 11-1. I was right, 11-1. Last year I was off by one game. I had FSU having a regular season of uh, 11-1, of course 12-1 going into the playoff, or 12-1 coming out of the ACC title game. I thought we'd lose a game. I think that's our ceiling this year. I don't. This all just goes back to the offense. I don't know if this is a team, man, that can run the table. You got Notre Dame, which you have to play at Notre Dame. I will say this about this Georgia Tech game. This Georgia Tech game is going to answer, I think it will answer a pretty decent amount of questions. I think the Georgia Tech game will show us, obviously, what we need to work on offensively and defensively. Is some of the hype real? Is some of the worry, like, were we worrying about the wrong things? It should have been worrying about other things. I think a lot of questions get answered in Georgia Tech. I think Georgia Tech is a solid first game opponent because while they have some major weaknesses, they also pose some unique threats. I think the ceiling is 11-1. I think the floor, I think the worst case scenario is 8-4 because though I wouldn't predict it, Memphis could be a tougher game than you think. Maybe SMU. But you never know, right? You just never know. Boston College gave us fits last year. That's going to be an interesting game. I think I'm in the middle here. I think I'm going 10-2. I would love to be wrong, but I think 10-2 can still get you into the ACC championship and still get you in the play. 10-2 does not eliminate Florida State from the playoff. If you made me pick a loss that I would say is definite, that Notre Dame game late, that's in November, that's late in the year, and that's an away game, most likely a night game. Notre Dame will probably be a top 10 team. FSU should be in that same. So you're going to have a big-time game. That game might be interesting. Now, I don't believe in Leonard. We saw him last year. He could do things with his legs, but he can't beat you throwing the ball. And Notre Dame keeps doing this thing where they keep getting transfer quarterbacks to lead their teams, and I don't know if it's going to work for them. The good thing about the Notre Dame game is it's kind of the same thing. That's the bad thing. The good thing is that it's late. And we'll know what type of team they are by November 10th. But also November up in the Midwest could be nasty, could be cold. Probably it will be cold most likely. That game is probably the one game that I would throw in as a loss if you made me pick a loss. And then, I mean, FSU could drop another game there. Obviously, you end the season with Florida. Florida might be on life support by the time they get to us. You play Miami late October. We'll know what type of team they are. I mean, that North Carolina game, I know they don't have Drake May, and we own Mac Brown, but you can't just go out there and expect a victory. And then you got that Clemson game, which Clemson game is always a 50-50 game to me. I think the major four, if you can come out 2-2 in the Miami, Florida, Clemson, Notre Dame, if you can come out 2-2, I think that's a win. Anything better than that, that's a major win, and you're definitely probably in the playoffs. But even at 10-2, man, I think that's a ACC caliber championship team. because I think one of those losses won't be in conference. So they may have one loss in conference and one loss out of conference. So 10-2 is what I'm leaning to. I'm going 10-2, which after an undefeated regular season last year, 10-2 is not bad. I know some of y'all don't want to hear it, but I'm just being honest. I don't foresee another undefeated season. I won't be mad if they do it. They definitely have the pieces and potential to do it. But it's a solid schedule to navigate, and they just got questions. FSU's got questions. FSU's got questions. FSU's got questions. No, that game's going to be early for me. That game is going to be 2 in the morning, my friend. That game is going to be 2 in the morning, which I guess, yeah, you can look at it late or early. I don't know. Either way, I'm watching it, and I will be up. So I'll be up from 2 a.m. to post game, however long that takes. And it's an off day. I'll sleep the rest of the day. 10-2. That's what I think. I think 10-2 season, and I think that's absolutely fine. Like, come on, 10-2. ACC. I think at 10-2, you still get the ACC championship game. Notre Dame probably is overrated, and again, we play them late, so we'll know if they're overrated or not by then for sure. Either way, that's still a tough environment to play in, and they have talent. And if you win the ACC, that's the thing. You can go 10-2, win the ACC, and still get the playoffs. So 10-2. I like 10-2. Mike Norvell knows how to answer questions. I don't. Mike Norvell has made a believer out of a lot of guys. But as always, y'all, hit the like button. Again, subscribe if you're new. Share the video to a FSU fan, college football fan in general. Share the video. And did I already say hit the like button? If I did, who cares? Hit the like button again. As always, man, it is your boy POLK over here on 863 Seminole TV. Stay classy, Seminoles. We are out here. Go Noles. I will see y'all in about a little over 14, 15 hours. Y'all go to bed. I'm going to be up the rest of the day. But I'll see y'all later on tonight for me. Afternoon for y'all. We are out here. Go Noles. Beat Georgia Tech. MVP of the game. See, you just messed up my whole outro. But good point. I got to pick a player of the game. Messed up my outro. You know what, man? Messed up my outro. That shit. Let me pick an MVP. Bold take here. Because I think the offense, for the most part, will struggle, or at least have its moments. Marvin Jones Jr. introduces himself to the college football world. I think he has multiple sacks in this game. I think him and Pat give that offensive line fits. They're going to try to use they're going to try to obviously get Haynes King out the pocket and try to do some things. Marvin Jones is a lot bigger and athletic than people think or that they know yet. Marvin Jones Jr. introduces himself to college football with multiple sack, first game in Garnet and Gold, stunting like his daddy. As always, man, like I said, I'm out here. Go Noles. Stay classy. Don't ever interrupt my outro again. Y'all take it easy, man.